Hey everyone, it's time to talk about RuPaul's Drag Race, Season 8, Episode 5. Now, this week, the queens are talking at the beginning of the episode, and there's an exchange between, not Acid Betty, Bob the Drag Queen, and Derek Barry that I found kind of strange and puzzling, especially on Derek's part. I mean, here's the thing is, why is I don't know, there's just tension between them, and why is Derek acting clueless about some things? um then he said, oh, 5 minutes later, Bob did, you'll be saying something negative or criticizing someone, and sure enough, he made the ratchet drag queen comment to Bob. So I think he's just really coming across as fairly defensive and not making quite a bit of sense in that regard. So anyway, that I thought was just a really strange interaction between those two. Now I do think that and later Michelle Visage, by the way, said something about Bob showboating a lot. And that's kind of what I was alluding to last week in my commentary, is that Bob can be a bit overpowering as far as his character. And although I like him as a drag queen and as a performer, I think he can be a bit much. And, obviously he can overshadow other people, and he needs to not showboat. That's a good way to put it. Now, they went quickly into the announcement of Snatch Game after a little bit of, bait and switch from RuPaul about that other possible show. And then, everyone was excited about Snatch Game and what character they were going to portray. I found it really interesting that two of them brought up Whoopi Goldberg, Naomi Smalls, who did a really good Whoopi from Color Purple, and Bob the Drag Queen, who had a look from Whoopi from Sister Act. Now, I really think Naomi should have stuck with her first instinct and done that Whoopi Goldberg. I don't know why she switched, other than the fact that Bob was potentially going to do Whoopi, but Bob didn't do Whoopi. So I don't get that. I wish we had seen more about her decision there, because obviously it was a big mistake. So Chi Chi Devane, she decided to do Eartha Kitt. Kimchi, the Kimmy Jung Un. Acid Betty did Nancy Grace. Derek Barry, thank God, did Brittany. He was thinking about not doing Brittany, and I was screaming to the TV, play to your strength. Do what you're known for. If she didn't, I could just hear Michelle and RuPaul saying, "Why didn't you do what you're famous for?" I mean, that would be like Chad Michaels not doing Cher. That's just crazy. It's an impersonation game, so why not impersonate who you impersonate best? So I'm glad she decided to do that, not that other character she was thinking of. Thorgy did Michael Jackson. Naomi Smalls, she ended up doing this Tiffany Pollard, New York, somebody. I don't know who that is. I'm not really sure. Robbie Turner, Diana Vreeland, who I have heard of but know very little about. And Bob the drag queen ended up doing the character from Orange is the New Black, Uzo Aduba, who I am familiar with, and Carol Channing. So we'll come back to that in a minute. So my initial instincts, and by the way, they went into Snatch Game so quickly, it felt like. My initial instincts were that I was a little unimpressed with the idea of doing Nancy Grace for Acid Betty. I was thinking, I don't know. And it turned out it was pretty sucky. I mean, pretty darn sucky. Didn't seem like Nancy Grace at all, and it wasn't funny at all. So, two strikes, and the third strikes was the look. So, three strikes, and she was out. Um, Kimchi's Kim Jong Un, or Kimmy Jong Un, I don't know. I wasn't that into it. I wasn't that impressed. I thought the look was good, and she did stay in character, as they said, so that's good, but I didn't find anything that entertaining about it or that funny. I really like Chi Chi's Eartha Kitt, and I was saying about halfway through that, I think it was Chi Chi's game to lose at that point, because she was the only one to me that was really coming across well, and she was, funny, not hilarious, but funny. And I thought, she was stealing the show in the first half. And then when Bob the Drag Queen brought out Carol Channing, that all changed. Because if you notice, his first character was good and he was doing a good job at it, but not nearly as funny as the Carol Channing. And like he said at the beginning, the idea of a 6 foot, I think he said 6'2" black man who's a drag queen doing Carol Channing impersonation is hilarious to start with. So, but here's the thing, and this is why the minute he brought that one out, I knew he was going to win, because I don't remember anyone else ever doing two different characters in the same Snatch Game, and that was just ingenious. And he did them both well. And the Carol Channing put it just like, over the top as far as humor and performance and entertainment, and he did so well at it. I mean, it was right up there with Pandora Box's Carol Channing from season 2. So way to go, Bob, on that one. Let's see, who have I missed? Derek Barry as Britney Spears was really good. Now, I don't think it was that funny, but to me, I really wish they de-emphasize that you have to be funny on Snatch Game. I think you just have to be good. Now, funny is always good, but, if you are really good at your impersonation, then that counts too. And I think he was, but, it was definitely not in the top couple. And I think that was, Thorgy. I don't know. What did you guys think of Thorgy's Michael Jackson? I mean, I thought it was a good impersonation, and I thought he did it well, but I didn't think there was a lot of life in it. I was kind of surprised and very disappointed. But not that he did a bad job, but I just, it didn't seem that great. So anyway, like I said, the top ones for me were definitely Bob the Drag Queen, and Chi Chi was second. That's how I would rate them. Robbie Turner, by the way, as Diana Vreeland, disappointing. Only because, I mean, yes, I think he had the look, and he may have even had the sound a bit, but I mean, just wasn't much to it. It was like dead. And I honestly think that this whole Snatch Game was a bit on the dead side, except for Chi Chi and Bob were the best of those. And Thorgy was good too, but just didn't have a lot of. I mean, we didn't even hear a lot from Michael Jackson, I don't feel. They don't show a lot of it. I wish they would show more of the Snatch Game, and maybe there's some online or something, but yeah, didn't really get much from that. Um, and then when we went back to the workroom and they were getting ready for the runway, there were two really interesting interactions that I want to touch on. The first one was with Acid Betty and Thorgy. They were talking about, New York and performing in New York and the different sort of drag cliques. And Thorgy brought up the fact that we've known for at least a few weeks that he's a musician and he plays these different instruments, including the violin and the viola. And he'd like to conduct an orchestra or a thorchestra, in full drag. And I thought that would be cool. But, so that was interesting. But I think the more interesting side was on Acid Betty. Now, if you remember, a couple weeks ago when Acid Betty was giving Chi Chi such trouble in that challenge and being not at all a team player and annoying me, I know that. It was said by Thorgy that, well, that's why Acid Betty hasn't worked in 10 years or whatever amount of time it was, is that she's very hard to work with. And also, she's a bitch. And she herself says she's a bitch. So now, in this interaction, she's saying, "Oh, I just don't fit in, and I'm a loner, or I'm off by myself because I'm a freak in drag, even in drag, and nobody accepts this kind of drag." I just don't buy that. I think that's his perception of it, but I honestly think Thorgy's explanation is more likely the truth from a couple weeks ago, because if you're hard to work with and you're a bitch and everybody dislikes you in that way, they're not going to want to work with you. And I think that's probably what it is. Not that, oh, they don't accept this kind of drag. Think of Sharon Needles. I don't think Sharon had that problem. I don't remember her ever complaining, and she was definitely a freak in drag. Now, she may have had some people or some drag queens like a Fifi O'Hara or somebody like that who didn't like her kind of drag, but she wasn't a loner. She didn't say, "Oh, I can't work," or "Nobody wants me to work." So I think a lot of it has to do with your personality and your work ethic. And I don't know about her work ethic, Betty's, but her personality and her ease of getting along with people, I don't think it's very good. So I think that's a bit of a misperception on his own part. It's the way he sees it, but I don't really think it's the truth. Hey, that's just my opinion, though. And the second thing was the information about Naomi that we learned. Now, I will say this before I go on about Naomi. Isn't it interesting that the two people that had personal stories shown and talked about, I should say, were Naomi and Betty, and guess who was in the bottom later? I wonder who. Who could it be? But anyway, back to Naomi. I didn't know before today that he was adopted, or he is adopted, and he's in a family with kids. What did he say? 8 and 3, so 12 kids total. So that's quite interesting. I'd actually like to know more about that. I like learning about these people and not just what they do on stage or that they're a bitch. There are other parts to these people, and I'm so glad we get to see that. And that's something I always liked about Untucked over the years is we learn more about them than just what is presented in that 1 hour, which I wish Drag Race was an hour and a half and Untucked should be an hour. My gosh, they've got to have more than what they show, these 20 minutes or so. But yeah, Naomi was talking about some comments that he gets about being an Oreo or not knowing enough about black culture, or also, well, you're attractive for a black man. Well, somebody actually says that to people. I mean, it's one thing if somebody thinks that, but to say it to somebody, good lord, get a grip. Anyway, in the runway. Now, I want to say that, okay, it was the night of 100 or 1,000. I mean, 1,000 Madonna looks, something like that. There were five in this runway. Five. I cannot believe that with all the Madonna looks over the 20 to 30 years that Madonna's been around, these folks could only come up with 4 or 5 total. That's crazy. So easily, for originality, or not really originality, but for just variety, let's say, Chi Chi's was one of the better ones. I liked Acid Betty's, and also Bob the Drag Queen. So, and by the way, Bob the Drag Queen's outfit, the Girl Scout, Boy Scout, whichever it was, the Boy Scout outfit that Madonna wore at the award show, the shorts on Bob the Drag Queen looked a lot better than the shorts on Madonna, and Madonna needs to take a clue from her. But she looked damn good in that, and she filled it out nicely. And like I said, I guess some of that's padding, but it was very natural looking. And one of the judges mentioned that, I think Carson maybe. But so the looks were, to me, disappointing. I mean, there were some good looks, don't get me wrong, but just the lack of variety. There were so few. I did like Robbie Turner's League of Their Own look. And like I said, I liked Acid Betty's and Chi Chi's. And I liked some of the kimono looks, but there were too many. My goodness. That's the only thing these people brought to wear for Madonna? Good Lord. But anyway, my winner was Bob the Drag Queen, who did win, and Chi Chi, as I said, honorable mention this week, definitely, in both the runway and the challenge. And my bottom two were Naomi and Betty, who were the bottom two. So RuPaul and I were on the same track again. RuPaul finally got on the right track, that means. The lip sync was Causing a Commotion by Madonna, which I've got to look up and remember what that was from. I know it's from a movie. I don't remember which movie, but I can. It might have been Desperately Seeking Susan or Who's That Girl, which I don't think. But anyway, I want to look that up. Naomi did better, but I have to say, as a whole, Naomi did better. But Acid Betty did really pretty well, I thought. Especially in the beginning, I liked her movement. I liked her expression. She did a really good job. But it's just Naomi did do better, and I thought that Naomi would win, and of course she did. So Acid Betty went home. I am a little disappointed that Acid Betty went home. I wish she would have stayed longer. But as she said, she's now known by millions, and hopefully will, have a long career due to this, and sort of a rejuvenation of her career, since she said she had. I think this was in Untucked. She said she had kind of put the Acid Betty character down for a couple years, and was doing other things, and now she's revived it. So overall, I thought this was a good episode. Like I said, I was a little disappointed with the Snatch Game, except for those two, three standouts. And then the runway look was, to me, disappointing to have so many Madonna looks and so few represented there. But next week, we're down to 7 queens. And I didn't get to see the preview because my recording of that show cut off early for some reason. So I'm going to have to look for the preview online to see what's going on next week. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I will see you then.